Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Today we're going to be quilting our very last block. We're going to be filling our last slash star with stippling and echoes. Two designs that we have definitely gotten a lot of practice with this year, but I think we need one more block just to have a little bit more fun with. So let me show you the design and how we can kind of work around all the wonkiness of our slash star. So here's our quilting design, and you can see we've got some stippling in the center, some wiggly U shapes coming out in the arms of the star, and some back and forth echoes in the background. Just in case you're looking for this guide, you can find it in the Building Blocks Quilt pattern available at leahday.com. Okay, I have not marked my stippling because I'm going to freehand quilt that. I don't need the marked lines because I think I can fiddle around and wiggle it into this area without those marked lines. I also haven't marked these wiggly U shapes because, again, that's a simple enough shape and a simple enough design that I can wiggle that without marking. I have marked these echoes, and how I did that, because the block is slightly wonky and not exactly going to fit this, I just tried to line up the edge of my star, laid this over on top of a light box, tried to line this up as best I could, and if the block was bigger, the background section was bigger, I just tried to make it up and mark the area as best I could. Remember, these are just rings of circles. It's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be perfect. So even if your marked lines, you know, if you're feeling like they're not coming out exactly right, don't worry about it. Don't get too obsessive with it. One idea, if you really wanted to get nitpicky, would be to use a protractor. So you would kind of have a point in the starting point, and then you'd spin around with a protractor and your marking pencil. That's an idea too. So definitely take those ideas and use them as necessary. One thing I have done with this block that I haven't with the others is I have stitched all the way across these lines to ditch my star. And the reason, you might be wondering, okay, how do I make this decision of what areas I stitch in the ditch and what I don't? Whenever I have an area where here's a quilting design here, stippling, and here's a different quilting design here that's wiggly U shapes, I really want there to be an outline, some kind of barrier line between the two of them, and that will be that stitch in the ditch line. So it's I kind of see it as an outline. If this was like a coloring book drawing, you would always have an outline between one thing and the next thing. You wouldn't have like a cup and a hand and there's no outline between the two. You just color everything the same color. So that's the way I look at it. And that's what guides my hand whenever I'm choosing what to stitch in the ditch and what not to. So let's get on the machine and see how this works in free motion. So here's our block ready to go, and I've already knocked out a lot of my echo quilting. And you can see, these lines, they just flow around these areas. They don't have to be perfect. So even if your star doesn't line up perfectly with those echo areas, don't get obsessive with it. Just mark it as best as you can, extend the lines or shrink the lines as needed to fit your block completely, and then you'll have a nice space to work with whenever you get to quilting those outer areas. For the center, we're going to freehand quilt this, and I'm going to be first starting with some wiggly U shapes. I think wiggly U shapes are a good thing to get started with to get into the flow. So I'm going to come down. I'm getting into the flow of stippling. Stippling is always soft curves. Of course, these are a lot longer wiggly U shapes, but the motion remains the same. This kind of always helps me loosen up a little bit, so I'm ready to start stitching those wiggly lines of stippling. So you can see I just flowed back and forth until that little arm was completely filled. Now I think I'm going to travel stitch using this perimeter line, the outer line of my block, and get to the next arm. Don't worry if your stitching builds up on this outer edge. We're going to be clipping that off very soon as we put the blocks together. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing. Make these just a little smaller because I have a smaller space. There we go. Now, as I quilt my stippling, I want to kind of do the, match use the stippling to kind of get me over to where I need to go. And I want to kind of wiggle my way over to here so that way I can knock out this arm too. So that's what I'm going to do. And this stippling was on a 1/4 inch scale. So I'm thinking about that 1/4 inch scale, how wide apart that is. It's a lot more dense and close together than my wiggly U shapes. I'm also working it more or less in a row, so that way I don't get lost or stuck in a corner. I'm able to stitch this very randomly because I've had so much practice with it, and I've gotten to know stippling very well. We're good buddies. And the best way to build a relationship with the design is to stitch it a whole lot. Take it and stitch it over an entire quilt. By the time you finish with it, you're going to know each other very well. Okay, so now let's stitch some more wiggly U shapes into this area. Just going up and down. Now, since I'm right here on this corner, I'm going to go on ahead and knock out all of these echoes. It's a good time, it's convenient, I'm right here, might as well do it. So I'm going to travel stitch carefully along that ditch to get inside and stitch that soft curve. Travel stitch again. Now if you were stitching this freehand, you would just be stitching across about 1/2 inch. That's about how far apart these lines are spaced. It does help to mark it in this situation simply because you're going for the effect of basically circle shapes and the star being on top. And don't worry, if you stitch beyond your perimeter line, that's no big deal. Okay, so at this point I'm just going to continue wiggling through the block. My plan from here will be to use this perimeter line to stitch down, do some wiggly U shapes to get inside, fill in some stippling. Through that center, I want to go ahead and knock out that whole center now and end up over here to finish up with my last set of little wiggly U shapes coming out of that arm. So I'm going to stitch through this entire thing and just speed the video up so you can see how it works. So that's it for quilting stippling and echoing into our last slash star, and that was our last block for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. I hope by this point that you have gained tons of experience free motion quilting on your home machine. I really hope that you feel a lot more comfortable free motion quilting your quilts and that you're starting to develop a relationship with designs like stippling and pebbling and straight lines so that you can pull these designs out and be able to quilt your own quilts at home. My name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. You can still pick up a copy of the Building Blocks Quilt Pattern, which 42 blocks full of piecing and free motion quilting instructions, and you can follow along with all of these videos that have been shot and shared for free for you to enjoy. So find the pattern and join in the fun at leahday.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.